Number 6. The Danube Coal Loader. At the Danube near Esztergom at the western tip of Primus Island, there's a unique, abandoned warehouse that stands quietly above the river. Barges were still anchored at the foot of the monster standing in the water half a century ago, but now only kayakers and canoers on water tours stop by the depot of the long-time Danube coal loading funicular. The Danube coal loader was built by Drogis and Banyak and went into service in 1927. The system was designed to load coal directly from the mine to barges via a 3.7-mile ropeway. The station's original purpose was served until 1963, when the cable car was taken out of service and the track and hardware were removed. The Voltotur Foundation, founded in 1994, established the goal of artistic use of the building. Ever since, a kind of creative workshop has sprung up around the building, which is also unique on a European scale. But due to the inability to raise sufficient funds for its renovation, the big dream remains unfulfilled. Number 5. Little Beaver Town. The famous Red Ryder BB gun from A Christmas Story was named after Red Ryder, a mid-century cowboy comic strip character. Due to how well known the syndicated comic was, it once even had its own amusement park. However, today you couldn't even refer to it as a ghost town. In 1938, Fred Harmon and Stephen Schlesinger created America's famous fighting cowboy. Because of the popularity of westerns, the comic strip rapidly expanded into a multimedia empire. They created comic books, radio, and over 35 movies and series, as well as toys, lunchboxes, and guns. Red Ryder and his young Native American sidekick Little Beaver were the main characters in the stories. The Native American boy and his pidgin English are an offensive caricature to today's viewers, but in the 1940s, people couldn't get enough of them. However, by the late 1950s, the Red Ryder's popularity had dwindled along with the rest of the Western genre. The comics artist and Albuquerque resident Fred Harmon was unfazed. In an attempt to replicate Disneyland's explosive success, Harmon declared the time had come to build a Western-themed amusement park centered around the Red Ryder characters and his thriving hometown. On the eastern border of Albuquerque and Carnuel, Little Beaver Town, which catered to exotic fantasies of the Old West, opened in July 1961 along Route 66. Around half of the space was transformed into an American Indian village, complete with teepees and Apache Eagle dancers. The other half of it was a western town with the Red Bull Saloon, an art gallery with original drawings by Harmon, and lots of shops selling trinkets and souvenirs. Visitors could choose to take a stagecoach ride or see an antique steam train trudging on the town's outskirts. Throughout the day, shootouts between Red Ryder and Ace Hanlon took place at regular intervals. Unfortunately, both the Strip and Little Beaver Town were discontinued in 1964. The amusement park momentarily renamed itself Sage City and was rented out as a film set and a rock and roll concert venue. However, this was also unsuccessful and the park was soon closed. The western town was defaced, damaged, and burned to the ground over time. In 2010, the city of Albuquerque bought the property and renamed it to the Route 66 Open Space, adding to the city's large land conservation effort. Amidst a few volunteer-led cleanups and proposals for a hiking trail system, nothing significant has been done with the property. Little Beaver Town today sits as an empty lot of strange concrete foundations riddled with broken glass and unchecked cacti. It's now abandoned, but ready for another chance at glory like the highway it sits on. Number 4. Herschel Island. Herschel Island, also known as Kachik Taryuk, is in danger of collapsing. The whalers are long gone, and the Inuvialuit, who formerly called it home, now only visit once in a while as a seasonal camping spot or a stopover while hunting. This 45-square-mile island is in the Beaufort Sea, north of the Arctic Circle, and it's mostly deserted and under threat from erosion and rapidly vanishing permafrost. The island can be an extremely challenging place to live. It's stunning on the one hand, treeless but covered in wildflowers and caribou that wander around. On the other hand, it spends roughly half the year trapped in ice and near darkness, disrupted only by a few hours of twilight. It is also a difficult place to bury the dead. The demand for whale oil and baleen drove whalers to the Arctic in the 19th century, and the island's population quickly grew to 1,500 people. Whalers frequently spent the winter hunkered down aboard their ships, but they also died there. It was a difficult task to dig graves in the tundra. One visitor noted that occasionally fires were lit repeatedly until the ground gave way to a shovel in order to make it easier to pierce the frozen ground. Nowadays, the island is home to 4 graveyards and a few other lonely graves scattered across the bluffs. One cemetery contains the remains of 24 whalers who died between 1890 and 1916. There's also a memorial to the wrecked whaling ship Triton, which sank nearby with its crew. The other includes the graves of 2 Royal Northwest Mounted Police officers who passed away in a 1918 typhoid outbreak. More than 100 Inuvialuit people were also buried as recently as the 1950s in 2 other cemeteries. These memorials are already being harmed by the environment. Wind erosion has started to break down wooden markers, and some hilltop graves have shifted. Some remains were even brought to the surface by a frost heave. According to a historic resources report, efforts to repair the damage are thwarted by the Arctic ground's relentless freeze-thaw action. The park management team, in consultation with the Inuvialuit, directed visitors away from these particularly sensitive sites and piled fresh dirt on top of the exposed remains. The island has been selected for UNESCO World Heritage status, and the World Monuments Fund named it one of the world's 100 most endangered places in 2008. However, there are still rough seas ahead. According to a paper published in the Journal of Geophysical Research, Earth's surface temperatures in the region have risen by about 36.5 degrees Fahrenheit over the last century. The CBC reported in 2017 that University of Edinburgh research teams on the island discovered that the land was disappearing at a faster rate than ever before. Some of the island's historic structures have been relocated inland to avoid the reach of rising water, according to Yukon News. But as shorelines erode, there's only so far they can go before hitting unstable ground. What's your favorite island? Tell us in the comments and hit subscribe while you're at it. Number 3. Pablo Escobar's Secret Mansion. Way beyond the Caribbean Sea, past the white sand tourist beaches, rests an island whose way of life has primarily remained unchanged for hundreds of years. About 800 people live on La Isla Grande, a remote island without running water or power lines where they rely primarily on fishing and farming for their livelihood. This idyllic setting piqued the interest of one vacationer who built a now-abandoned palace. Pablo Escobar was the infamous king of cocaine and the original El Patron. An extravagant complex of luxury buildings lies on the far side of the island, hidden and secluded between the tropical forest and the Caribbean Sea. The collapse of the structures reflects the fall of Pablo. At his peak, Pablo Escobar was responsible for roughly 80% of the world's cocaine supply. He oversaw the Medellin drug cartel, which smuggled more than 15 tons of cocaine into the United States daily. He was estimated to be worth $30 billion in 1989. Escobar's life was filled with excess, as one would expect from one of the world's richest men. He owned 15 planes and 6 helicopters, in addition to numerous luxury cars. The Hacienda Nápoles, his opulent home in Puerto Triunfo, included his own zoo of rhinoceros, giraffes, elephants, and a dinosaur park made from genuine prehistoric bones. Escobar's plans for his secret party home on La Isla Grande were no less extravagant. He ordered the construction of a massive complex that included a mansion, waterfront apartments, a palm court centered around a huge swimming pool, and a helicopter landing pad. No expense was spared in providing over 300 rooms for guests and partygoers. He even designed golden shower heads to be fitted in the bathrooms. Escobar's playground was reminiscent of Miami's South Beach in the 1980s. After hours of hiking through the Caribbean forest, a sliver of white concrete through the dense tropical undergrowth can be seen. The old, intricately tiled pathway then transitions from the forest floor to Escobar's palace. A 30-foot luxury speedboat can be seen on its side and has since become overgrown with tropical flowers. The mansion on La Isla Grande, now owned by the government, has progressively deteriorated. The spacious complex is already being reclaimed by the environment, and the once luxurious gardens are now a sanctuary for a family of massive wild pigs. Entering the main mansion, which had been decorated with white tile and marble, reveals that the walls are still stained with pastel blue and coral pink color schemes from the 1980s. The lobby leads to a sprawling courtyard shaded by palm trees and overlooking the Caribbean Sea. An oversized and drained pool dominates the court. As crazy as it may seem, residents still living on the island continue to carry on much like they did before the King of Cocaine arrived. Number 2. Klein Curacao. Travelers can discover an abandoned island after 2 hours of sailing bearing southeast from the former Dutch Caribbean outpost of Curacao. Klein Curacao, Dutch for Little Curacao, is a haunting island that has remained uninhabited for centuries. Only a deserted lighthouse, the shipwrecks of boats it failed to save, a few collapsed ancient stone buildings, and a burial site remain along the silent, flat coral atoll, measuring just over half a square mile. It's a chilling, wind-blown place, unlike many desert islands that conjure up images of tropical paradises. The lighthouse was constructed in 1850 and was once painted a vivid coral pink color. However, it's now abandoned, standing alone in the center of the island. With no natural source of running water, the 2 stories of rooms that housed the lighthouse keepers must have been a desolate place to live and work. Nevertheless, the wooden stairs leading to the top of the lighthouse are still in good condition. The German Navy attempted to establish a base here in 1888 as part of the hoped-for imperial colonization of the Deutsche Karibik. But they were chased away by the remote outpost's windswept conditions when a storm blew away the first foundations of a wharf. The Klein Curacao effectively highlights the island's natural effects. On the tropical paradise's northern side, white beaches, palm trees, and crystal-clear waters can be found. The unforgiving shoreline of pounding surf and ragged coral reefs can be seen on the southern windward side, which is more exposed to the elements. Klein Curacao's shipwrecks can be found there as well. The stocky, worn-down fragments of the oil tanker Maria Bianca Guidesman, which ran aground in the 1960s, looms over the southern beach. By now, half of the tanker has been snipped off and washed away by the ruthless waters of the Caribbean Sea. The remains of a once glorious 30-foot luxury boat have been brutally shattered against the sharp coral reefs right next to the Maria Bianca. Nowadays, numerous companies working out of neighboring Curaçao sail to the island by catamaran and offer day trips to tourists. Many of the crumbling stone structures look like simple houses, maybe once home to traveling fishermen. There is also a simple burial site on the northeastern end, marked by a wooden cross with no name. A trip to Klein Curacao is a visit to a remote, eerie island surrounded by waters where, for many years, piracy was the main source of income. Your only company on the island will be shipwrecks, turtles, lizards, and a beautifully faded pink lighthouse that is now slowly deteriorating into ruin. Number 1. Hitler's Olympic Village. The chilling, abandoned remains of Hitler's Olympic Village on the outskirts of Berlin, little known to most tourists and even Germans, was built for the so-called Nazi Games of 1936. It exemplifies both the Nazi regime's technical clarity and its philosophical absurdity. 2 years before the Nazi Party came to power, Germany was selected to host the 1936 Summer Olympics. Initially opposed, Reich Chancellor Adolf Hitler considered this an opportunity to spread Nazi propaganda and strengthen Germany's military machine. In Wustermark, a neighborhood outside of Berlin, Hitler supervised the building of an Olympic village. The now decrepit complex once housed 4,000 athletes in luxurious quarters, including state-of-the-art dormitories, dining areas, training facilities, and even a swimming pool. In an odd twist, it was intended to give the world a picture of an idyllic, beautiful, and peaceful Germany. The complex was even dubbed the Village of Peace by the Führer, with its layout mirroring a conventional village and each hut named after a German town. However, the German army initially intended to use the complex after the games ended and had complete control over both its construction and layout. Hitler further attempted to impose anti-Semitic politics on the games, advocating to forbid Jews and black people from competing. But this heinous tactic failed after other countries threatened to withdraw from the games. The great African-American sprinter Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals that year, defying this attempt to highlight the superiority of the Aryan race. The Gestapo intercepted a fan's letter to Owens, pleading with him not to accept the medal, according to displays at the location. The Gestapo also listened in on all calls made by athletes from the village back to their home countries. German soldiers received medical care and training at the Olympic complex during World War II. It was taken over by the Soviet Army in 1945 and used as a barracks for nearly 50 years until the fall of communism in 1994. The old Olympic Village was mostly left alone until around 2015, when vandalism and souvenir hunting destroyed the majority of the original artifacts. As Berlin's population grows, the western half of the crumbling complex is being developed into townhouses and apartments. This includes the gutting of the original dining hall and conversion into residential apartments as of summer 2019. Which one of these crazy abandoned places would you most like to visit? Let us know in the comments below. Also, if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more awesome content right here on American Eye.